We're going to be working with the merging of two images during this tutorial, and primarily we're going to be working with what's called the pen tool. So here we have the puppy that's been brought into the image with the girl on the couch. So you've been provided with the picture of the girl on the couch and the picture of the puppy. So I'm just going to get those open here. Now, in Photoshop, we'll have discussed in class things like image assessment and resolution and so on. If you have used Photoshop before, you may know that there's various ways of selecting, and what selecting means is that you would isolate an aspect of the image that you may want to bring into another image or work on or work around and so on. So much of Photoshop is selecting or designating an area that you want to do something with. In this case, the pen tool is the best tool that there is for accurately selecting what we want. And in the previous part of this tutorial, I mentioned the pen tool in regard to once you've learned it in Illustrator or InDesign or Photoshop, you've learned how it functions in each program. However, it does have some overlapping uses, but mostly different uses for each program. In Photoshop, it creates what's called a path, so it will do the same in Illustrator and InDesign. But with that path, we can create very accurate selections. So I'm going to open up the Paths palette. So this is the Paths palette or panel, and you can also find that under Window. So you go to Window and Paths. You'll want to have that open. And we will be working with layers in a bit, so you'll want to have your layers open as well. So Paths and Layers. Now the pen tool is this tool right here. And if you if you press the P on your keyboard, you'll be able to get it. And if you hold it down, you'll see that you get different functions. Don't worry much about these right now. However, I'm going to point out just a couple so that you're aware they're there. You can add an anchor and you can delete an anchor. And I'll explain what anchors are in a moment. So we're just going to make sure that we're selected on the top one, the regular pen tool. Now the idea behind the pen tool, you'll see in this little video that it's playing, is to create that path, but we're going to be actually tracing the perimeter of this puppy and bringing him into the image with the girl on the couch. So there she is without the puppy, here she is with it, and here he is by himself. So our job is to get him clipped, because right now he's just on a white background with an obviously reflective floor, and we want to clip him very accurately around all aspects of his perimeter. And we do this by using the pen tool, not by using some of the tools that you may be familiar with, such as the magic wand. So the magic wand, if I click on the background, it selects the white, but it also selects any white that's bleeding into our image. So obviously that's not an accurate way to get our selection. So I'm going to do Command D to deselect that. And by the way, these are what we call the marching ants. When you see that selection line, we refer to that as the marching ants. So you may hear me say that. So this has all the white selected within the area that I clicked, and I clicked up in here. So that's not an effective way of isolating the dog only. There's other tools here such as quick selection, so you can try them and see what they do. And you can see they're a little difficult to use because, again, they're not being very accurate. They're quite slow. So again, Command D to deselect, another kind of pointless tool. The lasso, sometimes people will use this if they have a very steady hand, but it's still very inaccurate, especially if you've had a couple coffees already. This is going to be really difficult. So it's just another, I would say, overall useless tool when it comes to selecting. So Command D. And remember, the navigation in Photoshop is the same as what we've been learning in InDesign. For zooming in and out, you can use your keyboard, Space Command to zoom in, Space Command Option to zoom out, Command 0 to reset. So I'm going to go to my pen tool. I'm going to get that selected, and I'm going to zoom in because we do want to be quite close with this. And we have our paths palette open, and we have the layers palette open with our basic background layer that comes up. So we need to choose a starting point. Now the name of the pen tool is, I would say, a little misleading, because when you think of pen, you think you're going to click and drag. In this case, you're not really doing that. So I'm going to undo that, Command Z. And what we're doing, we actually just want to click again, and then we start tracing behind where we're clicking. So I just undid those. What we want to do is actually find a starting point. There's a few things we're trying to achieve with the pen tool. One of them is to put down as few anchors as possible. So when I click, that's an anchor point. This second one is an anchor point. Those are anchor points. The blue where I click is an anchor. The other items here, the white ones, those are called handles. This is the forward handle, this is the back handle, and or you can call them front and back. What that's referring to is the direction that you're going, and the handle that when you click, hold, and drag, that's what you're grabbing. I'm grabbing the forward handle here. That'll make a little more sense in a moment. So our first click with the pen tool is simply clicking and letting go, not clicking and dragging. That means we have to find what's called a stop or a corner. So in this object, in this item that we're tracing, we're looking for somewhere where we would just have an anchor, because curves typically won't have anchors. We're trying to do as few anchors as possible so that we get as smooth a selection, but we also don't want to have anchors in the middle of any curves if we can avoid it. So the first one I'm going to do is right here in this little crook by his lip and neck. So I'm just going to click and let go and put an anchor point there. And then we're not clicking and dragging, we're clicking, letting go there, but then I'm going to go up further because I know this curve right here is essentially, I can probably put an anchor point here and match that curve. Now the thing is, with the pen tool, you're tracing behind where you're at with your cursor. So I'm going to click up here, click and hold and drag, click, hold and drag. And this does take getting used to. So when I drag, you'll see this is the line here that I'm trying to match to my item. That's my path line, my trace. What I'm holding right now is the forward handle. Don't worry about where that goes, because we have a solution for how that's going to affect what we're doing. The main priority, your first priority, is matching the path that you're creating to what you're trying to trace. So that's a good match right there. Then this handle is going up here. This is our back handle. This is the forward one, the one that we were holding when we clicked and dragged. So if I try to keep going, let's say I want to put an anchor point down here and trace behind my cursor, you can see that up here, the handle that I was holding is actually pulling the path in a direction I don't want it to go. So I want to override that handle because it's saying, I want to take the path this way, you want to go that way with it, so let's compromise a bit. But I don't want to compromise. I want full control over this. So I'm going to undo, Command Z, and I'm going to hold Option down, and you can see when I hover over my anchor point and I hold Option, it gives me that little point on the cursor. So Option is held down, and I'm going to click my anchor point. That gets rid of that handle that's trying to take this in another direction. Now I can go down here, click and hold, and drag, and very carefully, so you don't want to move too abruptly, you want to be very gentle, I can match that path. And then we'll see here, the handle is going in a direction that I don't necessarily want to go because I want to stay on the path of my item. So this may try and pull my path, and if it does, I have to get rid of it again. So I'm going to go around to here because I can probably complete a full curve there. So I'll click, hold, and drag, and you can see it is pulling that a bit. Right here it's pulling it. So I'm going to Command Z that, Option click on the anchor, and then I'll probably go about here, and then I can match that path. So there's a few things. You're jumping ahead, you're making sure this handle is hopefully going in the direction you want, but if it can't, you'll have to override it by Option clicking the anchor, and then you can keep going. So again, handle's not going where I want to go, hold Option and click, and then now this is a good spot because my first priority, which is matching the path, has been met, but also the handle is going pretty much exactly where I want to go, so I don't need to get rid of the handle. And that's good because when I get rid of the handle, it creates somewhat of a little pixel jump or shift. So when I can keep the handle, that makes an even smoother transition. So I'm going to go up through here, try and first priority, matching the path on what I'm tracing. I'm clicking and hold, I clicked and I'm holding, and I'm going to try and get the handle pointed roughly where I want to go. So that's not bad. And you saw when I moved the image like this, I'm holding my space bar down just to click, drag, and move the image a bit. Now the handle's going in there. I'm going to Option click the anchor point. I'll go up here because I can probably get it in one curve. Option click. Option click. So I'm clicking, holding, and dragging. Now I'm going to try and go right over the whole head here. Click and hold. Now his head's not that perfectly round, but I'm going a little fast here. So Option click because that handle again is going where I don't want to go. And then I'm back in control. Now there's a couple things you don't want to do here. You don't want to do this. The point of using the pen tool is not hundreds of points. It's as few points as you can do. So I'm just going to get rid of those. I'm going to go to the Direct Select Path tool. Now you may have the Path Selection tool showing. I'm holding that down, going to the Direct Select. So it's that little arrow down there beneath your Type tool. And I'm just going to click and drag across all these points I don't want. And I'll be able to delete them only. Now I need to go back to my pen tool, click on the path, the last anchor I had. You'll see the cursor there that is indicating I'm on an anchor. I'll click, that activates the path again, and I can keep going. And that there I went too far. I couldn't get the proper curve. There's probably 2 curves here, so I'll undo. And I'm going to go only to here. And then I'll go down to here. And now that you can see is affecting my curve, so I'll undo. Option click on the anchor, get rid of that handle. Now I'm back in control. Spacebar to move it. Again, option click. And here, ideally, I've matched my path. I was able to get my handle going where I want to go. So now I can keep going. Whenever you can get the handle directed in the direction you want to go, that's ideal. Now don't worry if you have minor things to adjust, because there is a way we can do that. Here I can barely see the leg in the white, so I'm doing a little bit of guessing there. But that's okay. So clicking, holding, dragging, and I'm able to make a very accurate selection around the perimeter of this. Remember, when that handle's not going where you want to go, you're going to option click or alt on a PC, and using Command Z a lot, because you put an anchor down and you realize that's not the right point, not the right trace. Now this is a tool that when you really get to understand how it works, it really makes, it opens up use of Photoshop a lot. It's I would say, probably the best tool to know in Photoshop as far as being able to do proper, accurate work in it. So remember, when that handle doesn't go where we want to go, option click to get rid of it, and then keep going. Now here, I wasn't paying attention, so I actually went too far, because the perimeter of this dog actually stops here and keeps going up here. I went into the image, so I'm going to go back to my direct select, or I could just press A and that would bring it up, and then I'll delete that, go back to my pen tool, reactivate the path just by clicking on the last anchor point, and then I can keep going. Now, if you have just a straight line, you don't have to click and hold. I had here just a straight, and I knew I was going to a stop, so I just clicked. I didn't have to click, hold, and drag. But this, for the most part, has a lot of curves, so I'm clicking, holding, dragging, and then again the handle goes in where I don't want to go, option click to get rid of the handle. And you sincerely have to be very patient with yourself learning this. It is not an easy tool to learn. I think that's why it's such a valuable tool to know, because anything I've found, anything that's easy to do in Photoshop is typically not as effective as something that takes a little more time and focus. But once you get this tool down, you really can become quite good at Photoshop without too much effort. Okay, so with this, I'm about to close this path. Now the thing about the path, and you can see up in our paths palette here, it's showing the path that we have. So I have to close that path. I have to finish this And essentially that means clicking on the anchor point that was first put down. So my first click will be my last click sort of thing. That makes sure it's closed. And you'll see I just put this anchor point down, and this was the first one. So when I hover over the first one, it gives me the little circle on my cursor. That circle means I'm about to close that path. I'm about to make a shape, a closed shape. That is very important, because if we don't do that, then we're going to run into very many difficulties with our selection. And I'm going to show you what one of those difficulties would look like. If I were to make this a selection now without closing the path, it actually luckily read my fault there. But what it would usually do is it would make like a line in. Now it doesn't have one here because I've done so well around the exterior, but it would have made a glitch in there. So I got lucky there, but I'm still going to close this path because I have to. So I'll close that. Okay, so that's the first thing, getting that perimeter path. You can see it goes all the way around. It's quite good. It took my time, but it could be a little better. So the first thing I want to do in any image that we're selecting is see, are there any what we call holes, like spots, or holes that are within the image that we have to go and actually clip as well. So we have one here where his ear is touching his face. So this, if there was a black background behind him, we would see black through here. This is a hole. So I need to clip that as well. Now I'm still selected because I was making that path. I'm by default selected on the path in here. I don't want to lose that, so it's important to name your path, and that will preserve it in the document, because it's easy to click somewhere and override the original path. So I'm just going to double click on here, and it'll say path 1. That's all I need to name it. I don't need to give it a formal name. I can say OK. Now I've at least preserved that path. Now that I'm still selected on it, I'm going to add this little hole to this path. If I was clicked off of it like this and I went and added that hole, you see it starts a second path. I don't want that because I need these to be together. So I'll undo that. Clicked on the path, clicked off of it, clicked on it. There we are, we want it clicked on. And then I'll go in here and I'll trace that hole out. Option click. So it added it in there. Very difficult to see, but it's there. Now, if I wanted to make adjustments, if I was doing this and needed it to be 100% accurate, I would go to my direct select cursor, or you can press A on your keyboard. Remember, there's the path selection. So if I hold that down, I get both. So whichever one is showing, you may want the other, depending on what you want to do. But the black one selects the path on the whole path that you touch. So it's got the perimeter one right now. If I hold shift and I select the interior one as well, now I have the whole thing selected and I can click off. And if I go to the white one, then I can actually click on my path. So if you were already selected on it, you may want to click off just out here and then click back on, and then you can adjust your path. You can go around and say, okay, well, I don't like that, so click on an anchor. That lets me adjust the handles a bit, and you can move the anchor, you can move a line between anchors, or you can move a handle. So for properly accurate selections, you would want to go around and make those adjustments. I'm not going to adjust too much here because we want to keep going, but if I see some highly obvious things, I do want to change those. And it really does take sort of a gentle hand while you're working on this, because when you move one thing, sometimes other things move. So you just want to be careful, and the more accurate you can be, the better. Again, the less anchor points you have, the better. And this does become very instinctive. I can look at pretty much anything that I need to trace, and just by looking at it, I can know where I'm going to have anchor points. That increases speed and accuracy. So again, have patience with yourself and know that you improve quite quickly. The main things to know is that first click is just a click and let go at a stopped area, like we did here, and then clicking, holding and dragging to get a curve, and then holding Option down when you have to eliminate a handle that's trying to take your path in another direction. In the next part, we're going to look at turning this into a selection and then bringing it into the other image.